Hello and welcome to my video. My name is Chuck Holmes. I'm the founder of parttimecommander.com. We are a website designed to help citizen soldiers. This video is going to talk about the ins and outs of why I resigned my commission as an officer, some things I went through, some tips to consider if this is something that you're thinking about. And really what I want to do is just get you thinking. I want you to do what is best for you. This is a controversial topic. The day you tell anybody in your unit that you're thinking about resigning, red flags go up, people start acting weird. Don't really know why, but it's almost like a taboo. Now, there's nothing wrong with being an officer. There's nothing wrong with staying in and retiring. And of course, there's nothing wrong with doing your time honorably and getting out as well. Each person is on their own journey in life, and you have to do what is best for you. But making the decision to get in or stay out, especially as an officer, it's not always an easy decision. A lot of people have remorse. A lot of people wish they got out. A lot of people who got out wish they stayed in. Everyone's journey is going to be a little bit different. Now, I spent about 15 years in the Army, and that was a combination of enlisted and officer in active duty, the Reserve, and the National Guard. So I was fortunate to be in all three components, both enlisted and officer. I resigned initially as a lieutenant when I was at Fort Carson, Colorado. I was going through a divorce. I was trying to save my marriage. I thought getting out might do that good. I really realized I didn't want to be a full-time soldier anymore. I had other aspirations I wanted to pursue. So that decision wasn't all that tough. And then eventually I came back in the National Guard as a lieutenant, and then I worked my way up to major, and then I decided to resign for good with about 15 years in. So that's kind of my story. Now, let's talk about why I did it, some mistakes I might have made, some considerations you should consider. I want to start by telling you this is not something I decided to do overnight. It was a process of well over a year, almost 2 years, maybe even a little bit longer. I evaluated a lot of my options. What would my pension be if I finished my time? How much was that going to be? Now, of course, I wasn't going to get my pension until I was 60, so it wasn't that big of a deal. Could I be a good officer still for another 5 years and do my time? Now, one of my biggest frustrations personally are both enlisted and officers who their heart is no longer in it, but they stay in just to collect a check, or they're just sticking around to get their pension. And I guess we all have self-interest, and that's okay to do that. But I've always believed that if my heart wasn't in it, it's time for me to check the box, move on to something else. And that's what I decided to do. I just believe soldiers deserve leaders who want to be in that duty position, not someone who's doing it just to check a box or just to get a paycheck. So these were 8 of the most common reasons of why I decided to move on. Number one is I knew I was going to be a staff officer most of my career. This doesn't bother everybody, but I'm a hands-on kind of guy. I was enlisted. I'm a doer. I like being the tip of the spear. I like being where the rubber meets the road. Maybe you can relate to that, maybe not. I did not want to be a PowerPoint ranger the rest of my career. I knew if I was lucky, I could do 4, 5, 6 years as a major, do my staff time, get selected to lieutenant colonel, maybe get battalion command, maybe brigade command if I stayed around a little bit longer. But I didn't want to do that. I did not want to be a PowerPoint ranger. I wanted to be leading troops or not doing anything at all. Number two, this goes hand in hand with number one, but I knew that I wasn't going to be with troops again. I really enjoyed the Army as an officer at the company level and below, actually at the battalion level and below. Once I got up to the brigade level and above, it just wasn't very appealing to me. I like being the XO, the platoon leader, the commander, where I'm working directly with both NCOs, soldiers, and officers. And I did not want to have to wait another 5 or 6 or 7 years or 8 years to get to lieutenant colonel and battalion command and do that. Number three, I didn't really believe in the wars we are fighting. And I know I probably shouldn't say this on a YouTube video. I'm not really much of a political guy. No desire to make anyone angry. I'm definitely not a hippie or a protester or some anti-war radical thing. I just don't like any politician, to be honest with you. And during my time in the Army, I deployed to 2 combat zones. I was in OIF 1, and I deployed in Operation Enduring Freedom to Kosovo. I just didn't like the fact that as a nation, we push our agenda, our values on other countries. That was really led me to believe that I didn't want to be in a combat zone if Congress wouldn't even declare it a war. You know, we go excuse me, as a military, wherever our politicians send us, and we're basically taught not to question it. And that's okay. But as I get older, I question everything. And you can't really do that as a military leader. But it does help if you're deployed, if you believe in what you're doing. It's pretty hard to deploy as a military leader if you don't believe in what you're doing. Number 4, this is a good one. I don't believe in the current Jerry's kids mentality that the Army promotes. Now, every generation that you talk to will tell you that their time in the military was harder than yours. And if you look at the Army and the military over the last 50 to 100 years, it's changed dramatically. And in the truth, in the next 50 to 100 years, it's going to change equally as dramatically. But I'm kind of an old school guy, and I believe in discipline. I'm not part of the entitlement mentality that today's generation has, at least most people, of course, not everybody. I'm not a big believer in having everything handed to you on a silver platter. And I have found in the military that a young soldier has more rights than their senior leader. And I personally will never understand that, how someone who has spent 0 time in the military can make an accusation or do something or say something, and the person who has 10, 15, 20 years of military service is now in question. It's crazy. Now, I don't blame a lot of the problem in the military on the soldiers, the new generation. I blame a lot of it on the leaders, because as leaders, our job is to enforce the Army standards. It's to lead from the front, to lead by example. And although I'm a Generation X guy, I'm still kind of old school. I resonate more with the World War II vets and the Korean War vets and a lot of even the Vietnam War vets. And we've definitely gotten away from that in the Army. If you spend even 15 minutes in any unit, you'll find the specialists and below are the ones that run the company in most cases. Number 5, I got tired of the politics. Now, unfortunately, as officers, you're going to deal with a lot of politics. And this is really no different from the corporate world. As you move up the food chain in any organization, there are politics. I'm just not a political guy. I hate politics. I call a spade, and I like to tell it like it is. That's just my personality. That's my style. I got tired of the backstabbing. I got tired of people believing that the only way they could look good is by making someone else look bad. And I didn't want to have to kiss someone's ass just to move up through the ranks. You know, another thing I really got tired of, and I don't say this a lot, but in the Army, if you just do your time, 99% of the time, you're going to get promoted and move your way up as an officer, at least to a lieutenant colonel, if you do your 20 years. And there's really no incentive to be a high performer. Yeah, you can get promoted below the zone, and that happens sometimes, but for the most part, everyone is paid the same. Everyone follows a similar career path. No matter how good you are at what you do, you still have to wait a certain amount of time to get promoted. You're probably still going to get promoted at about the same time as someone who's a dud, even if you're a stud. And I just don't subscribe to that. I'm more of like the commission-based pay kind of guy. I like performance-based pay. You perform, you move up. You don't perform, you move out. And that's not really the way the military works, at least not anymore. Number 6, I got tired of the unpaid work hours. Now, keep in mind, when I resigned, I was a National Guard officer. I understand when you're an active duty officer, you're basically paid for 24/7 of your time. I get that. No complaints with that. In the Guard and Reserve side of things, I put in a lot of hours unpaid. And I'm not just speaking for myself. Every officer I know put in a lot of unpaid hours. And I guess it does come with the job. I'm not complaining about that. But there is a threshold. No one should work 40, 50, 60 hours a month unpaid in any profession. It's just not cool. Maybe you can relate, maybe not. And being that when you're a citizen soldier, you're only drilling 2, maybe 3 days a month, you have a lot of things you have to do, and that's not going to get done on drill weekend. That's done either before or after drill weekend, and you're expected to do it. And you know what, officers, we make it happen, we do it. But there comes a point you ask yourself, excuse me, is it worth it? Is it worth me continuing to put in all this time unpaid when I could be doing other things where I do get compensated for my time? Also, I had a business during my time in the Guard. So all that unpaid time, not only was I not getting paid for it, but it was taken away from all the time that I had to put into my business to keep that going. Number 7, I was born to be an entrepreneur. I am a free-spirited person. Maybe you are, maybe you're not. Maybe you like working for the other man. Maybe you like the job security, the good benefits, all those things. I'm more of a risk taker. And here's some advice that someone told me was basically, they said, look at someone who is 10 or 15 years further along than you in a similar career and ask yourself, do they have what I want to have when I get to that point in my career? So this applies to civilians and military people. Look at your boss or your boss's boss and ask yourself, are they making the type of money? Do they have the prestige? Do they have the fulfillment? Do they have the responsibilities? Do they have the position that I want to have when I'm at that point in my life? And if you can answer yes to that, you should probably stay in. If you can answer no to that, it might be a good time to move on to a new career, whether you're active duty or a citizen soldier. And number 8, I have a big vision for my life. I just feel like I have this calling, and I understand probably most people feel this way, but I felt like I was born to do something great. And serving in the military is great, but I felt, or I believe, that I was born to do something even bigger through my businesses, through my philanthropy efforts that I want to do. I've got some big goals and big dreams. And I knew if I stuck around just another 5 more years, it would just slow down my effort. Now, this is an update. So what you're looking at on the screen was the blog post summarizing why I resigned. And this was written about 10 years before. So I just want to share an update. I've been out of the military for more than 10 years now. I think it's been almost 12 years. Now, this is just some real talk. Now, when I first got out, I had a little bit of remorse. I questioned myself. I think everybody who resigns and gets out, I think they do that at some point. I asked myself, was I stupid? Was I crazy? Should I have just wrote it out for 5 more years to get that retirement? But now looking back that it's been 12 years, I don't regret it. I think it's probably the best thing that I did, because that's 12 more years I could be focused on my business and pursue my dreams of being an entrepreneur and become successful. And things have worked out very well for me. My wife and I, we both work from home. We sleep in, we live our dream. We plan on being retired before we're 50. So it's good in that respect. Could it have gone bad? Of course. So this is what I want to tell you if you're thinking about resigning after hearing my story. Number 1, put a lot of thought into it. Ask a few people who've stayed in if it was worth it. Ask a few people who got out what they would do differently, what they learned from it. And here's my best piece of advice. Do not resign your commission unless you have a plan. You don't want to just wing it and put yourself in a bad financial spot because you don't have a game plan. You want to have a job lined up, or a school lined up, or a business lined up. You should always leave the military in a better position than you were when you were in the military or before you went into the military. I used to tell my soldiers and my young officers that you don't want to get out and be worse off than you were 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago when you first got in the military. You want to have your I's dotted, your T's crossed if you're thinking about resigning. And finally, once you make the decision, you put some thought into it, you research the pros and cons, you talk to some people. Once you make the decision, don't look back. Just go forward, move on with your life. And if you're really wondering, should I get out completely or should I stay in? There's always the IRR, there's the ING program in the National Guard. You can stay in those in case you decide that you miss it after a year or 2 and you want to come back in. If you're active duty, you can always switch over to the Guard or Reserve, do that for a couple of years and then decide. So there are lots of options. And regardless of what you decide, I know you're going to do what is best for you. Life is short. Do what you're passionate about. Fulfill your purpose. Whether you resign or stay in, I applaud you. I thank you for your service. I hope you got some value from today's training, and I hope you'll think about your options and what's best for you and your family. With that, thanks for your time. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Don't forget to check out the links in the description box below this video. Have a great day, and make sure you check out my other videos. Thank you.